The night had been planned with precision, not celebration. Every detail reflected control, influence, and authority qualities that defined the young Korean Mafia boss far beyond his age. The gathering was not meant for joy. It was a statement, a declaration that power remained firmly in his hands. Wealth surrounded him, yet it did not impress him. He stood at the center of it all with a calm confidence earned through discipline rather than time. Though young, his reputation was established, his presence commanding. People admired him carefully, respected him quietly, and feared him instinctively. This night was proof that his rise had not been temporary, it was intentional. Luxury masked danger. Behind the elegant arrangements and polished appearances lived unspoken rules and invisible boundaries. Every guest understood their place. Loyalty was expected, mistakes were costly, and attention was a form of currency. Nothing here was accidental. The host observed everything. He watched movements, measured expressions, and read silence as easily as words. Control was his greatest strength, and detachment was how he maintained it. Emotional distance had protected him in a world where trust was rare and weakness unforgiving. Despite the grandeur, emptiness followed him. Surrounded by influence, he remained untouched by connection. Admiration meant little, and attention carried no warmth. Power had shaped his life early, demanding sacrifice before he understood what he was giving up. Loneliness became acceptable, even necessary. This night symbolized achievement. It marked how far he had come without reliance on anyone else. The empire he controlled did not rest on heritage alone but on intelligence, restraint, and calculated dominance. Every presence in that space acknowledged his authority, whether willingly or not. Yet, beneath his composed exterior, restlessness stirred. Not dissatisfaction, something unfamiliar. A sense that this display of power, flawless as it was, lacked meaning. He dismissed the feeling quickly. Purpose did not require emotion. Control did not need companionship. Or so he believed. The grand night continued as planned, flawless in execution, heavy with influence. Nothing suggested disruption. Nothing hinted that a single unforeseen moment would soon challenge the balance he had perfected for now. He remained exactly as he had always been, young, powerful, untouchable, and unaware that the night meant to confirm his dominance was quietly preparing to change his fate. She did not belong there. And yet she walked with a calm that made it difficult to ignore her presence among faces shaped by privilege and intention. Her appearance felt unplanned, almost accidental. She was young, composed, and unaware of the invisible lines she had crossed. There was no arrogance in her posture, no hunger for attention. She simply existed within a space not meant for her, unaware of the rules written into its walls. Her difference was quiet but undeniable. Where others wore confidence sharpened by ambition, hers was natural. Where guests carried rehearsed elegance, she carried authenticity. It was not her appearance alone that set her apart, but the absence of fear that normally followed authority. She moved without hesitation, without understanding the danger surrounding her. This was a world built on permission. Every person present had earned their place through loyalty, influence, or submission. Invitations were not extended lightly, and boundaries were enforced without explanation. Her presence disrupted that balance, not loudly, but unmistakably. Yet she drew no attention deliberately, she observed carefully, absorbing the atmosphere with curiosity rather than judgment. Her eyes reflected awareness, not naivety. She sensed the weight of the environment but did not yet understand its source. The power in the air felt distant to her, abstract. She carried her own reason for being there. It was not ambition or rebellion that brought her into that space, but circumstance. A moment of chance, a decision made without knowledge of consequence. She could not know that every step forward carried risk, or that unseen eyes had already noticed the anomaly. The rules of the night shifted. What should have been removed quietly was instead allowed to remain. Not through mercy, but through hesitation. Something about her presence resisted immediate correction. Something invited observation rather than punishment. Uncertainty replaced routine. Her existence within that controlled world introduced a variable no one had planned for. A flaw in perfection. A question without an answer. and questions in that world were dangerous. She remained unaware of it all, unaware that her presence had already begun to unravel the careful order of the night. Unaware that attention had found her not the careless kind, but the kind that measured, analyzed, and remembered. The uninvited presence did not cause chaos, that it caused stillness, and in that stillness, something irreversible began to take shape, a moment suspended between chance and destiny, waiting for a single glance to transform it into something far more powerful. That it happened without warning, without intention, without reason. In a world governed by calculation and discipline, one moment escaped control. His attention, trained to filter distractions and dismiss irrelevance, stopped completely. Among countless faces that held no meaning to him, one presence broke through his composure. Their eyes met. The instant stretched longer than it should have. Not because of drama, but because something unfamiliar occurred within him. Recognition without memory. Interest without logic. A pull that did not belong in his world. He did not look away. Control had always been instinctive, yet in that moment, it wavered. His gaze held hers not with dominance, but with curiosity layered with something far deeper. There was no calculation behind it, only awareness. Sharp, undeniable awareness. She felt it too. Though she did not understand who he was or what his attention meant, she sensed the shift immediately. His focus carried weight, not threat. It was intense, unwavering, and strangely grounding. It stirred something unexpected within her, alertness mixed with calm. The world around them faded, noise softened into distance. Movement slowed into insignificance. The moment did not isolate them physically, but emotionally. It created a separation from everything else, as if reality narrowed to nothing but mutual recognition. That he searched for familiarity, he found none. And that unsettled him. His mind moved quickly, analyzing her presence, her posture, her expression. Nothing suggested manipulation. Nothing pointed toward danger. What he saw instead was authenticity, and that was rare. Too rare. Attraction followed awareness. Not the impulsive kind shaped by desire, but something steadier. Something rooted in interest, respect, and intrigue. Her eyes did not beg for approval or shrink from intensity. They met his evenly, honestly, without expectation. That equality disturbed him. Very few people looked at him without fear or ambition. She did neither. In her gaze, he saw curiosity not about his power, but about him. That difference echoed deeply within him. The moment passed. Time resumed its rhythm. The world returned to motion, yet something remained altered. He carried the weight of that look with him, as if it had marked him quietly, and she carried it too. Neither spoke. Neither moved toward the other. But something had already begun, something that required no words to exist. That single look rewrote the night. What had been a controlled display of authority became the beginning of uncertainty. What had been routine turned personal. The future shifted slightly, invisibly yet permanently. Because in that one shared glance, two lives recognized each other not as strangers, but as possibilities. Suspicion had always guided his instincts. It was the discipline that kept him alive, the shield that prevented mistakes. Every unfamiliar presence was analyzed, every deviation corrected without hesitation. Yet this time, instinct did not command removal, it demanded understanding. Her presence unsettled him, not because it felt dangerous, but because it did not. That contradiction held his attention. In a world where threats were easy to identify, innocence became the anomaly. He examined her quietly from a distance, not with authority, but with interest. Something about her calm resistance to intimidation challenged everything he expected. Curiosity replaced routine. Instead of ordering control, he observed. Instead of assuming intent, he considered possibility. Each movement she made felt uncalculated, natural. She did not seek validation or safety through alliances. She remained grounded, self-contained, and unaffected by the hierarchy around her. This restraint intrigued him deeply. HR wondered how someone so young could carry such composure without armor. How someone could exist in that space without fear or ambition guiding their steps. Felt deliberate yet genuine. That balance was rare and dangerous to ignore. His suspicion weakened. Not because it disappeared, but because it no longer felt dominant. The curiosity he felt outweighed his need to categorize her as a threat. She did not fit any pattern he recognized, and that uncertainty refused to be dismissed, that he found himself wanting answers, not out of control, but out of connection. He wanted to understand what had shaped her, what had placed her there, and why her presence affected him in ways power never had. This desire surprised him. Wanting knowledge without strategy felt unfamiliar. She remained unaware of the shift. Unaware that the man whose approval controlled the atmosphere had chosen patience over command. Unaware that her existence had interrupted systems built over years. Her calm continued, unguarded, honest. And that honesty dismantled barriers. He began to see her not as an interruption, but as a moment of clarity in a world saturated with pretense. Suspicion required effort now. Curiosity came naturally. Something irreversible took hold. Because curiosity, once allowed to grow, rarely remained harmless. It invites closeness. It asks questions the mind cannot silence. And in his world, curiosity often led to consequence. Yet this time he did not resist it. For the first time, he allowed interest to exist without restraint, and in doing so, he unknowingly stepped closer to something far more powerful than danger. He stepped toward connection. What followed curiosity was not urgency, but awareness. Something invisible settled between them, unspoken yet unmistakable. It was not attraction that demanded attention, but recognition that lingered quietly. He felt it in the way his thoughts returned to her without effort, and in how the noise of the night seemed less significant whenever she crossed his awareness. He had built his life on distance. Emotional separation was not a habit, it was survival. Yet with her, distance felt unnecessary. She did not force closeness or seek reassurance. She simply existed, and that existence pulled him closer without resistance. The connection formed without words. It grew in pauses, in shared stillness, in moments where neither felt the need to perform. Their awareness of each other deepened through subtle observation rather than action. Each noticed details the other never tried to reveal. He began to soften in ways he didn't recognize. His posture eased. His intensity quieted. Not because he lost control, but because control felt less required. Around her, vigilance relaxed into presence. That shift unsettled him, yet it also brought calm he had long forgotten. She sensed the change. Though she did not understand the power he carried, she recognized the steadiness behind his attention. It was not invasive or commanding. It felt intentional, protective even, though nothing had been claimed or promised. That restraint made the connection feel safe. Romance grew beneath the surface. Not bold or dramatic, but steady and patient. It existed in glances held too long, in awareness that followed absence, in the quiet acknowledgement that something meaningful was taking shape without demand. He respected her space. That respect deepened everything. It separated his attention from everything else he had known. For the first time, interest was not about possession or control, it was about understanding and care. The silence between them carried meaning. It held curiosity, attraction, and something tender. A connection forming without urgency, without expectation, yet with undeniable depth. The absence of words made it stronger. Something rare was unfolding. He had known desire before, but this was different. It did not distract or weaken him. It sharpened him, made him reflective, made him cautious not with her, but with himself. She was becoming important. Not as a threat to his world, but as a reminder that life could exist beyond control and calculation. That romance did not require chaos. That love could begin quietly, without announcement. The connection settled deeper. Neither resisted it. Neither rushed it. They allowed it to exist, unfinished and undefined, yet powerful in its simplicity. What had begun as chance was becoming attachment, and what formed in silence was already stronger than anything spoken aloud. As the connection deepened, so did the weight of what remained unspoken. Both carried histories shaped by forces beyond choice, and those histories hovered quietly between them. The attraction they felt was no longer simple or light, it had gained depth. Colored by curiosity about the lives they had not yet revealed, he understood secrecy better than anyone. His world thrived on it. Power demanded silence, and survival depended on concealment. Yet with her, secrecy felt heavier than usual. Not because she demanded truth, but because the closeness forming between them deserved honesty. He began to sense her complexity. She was not merely a woman who had stepped into the wrong place at the wrong time. There was intention behind her calm, experience behind her composure, strength shaped by endurance rather than privilege. These realizations increased his respect for her and deepened the attachment growing quietly within him. She carried her own untold story. It revealed itself not through words, but through restraint. Through the way she observed rather than reacted. Through her independence, her refusal to rely on anyone for direction or protection. She was young, yet grounded in a way that suggested she had learned to stand alone early in life. Their silence held layers that concealed truths not yet shared, and feelings not yet claimed. Each sensed that the other carried weight beneath their calm exteriors. This awareness did not create distance, it created patience. Romance matured into something steadier. The attraction evolved beyond curiosity. It became care. Care shaped by understanding, not possession. He did not rush to uncover her secrets, nor did she attempt to decode his world. Respect guided them where impulse could not. Still, the tension remained. Unspoken truths have gravity. They pull at connection, asking to be acknowledged. He felt the growing responsibility of what he represented and what revealing it could mean for her safety. For the first time, secrecy was no longer protection, it was a risk. Yet honesty required timing. He knew too much truth too soon could shatter something fragile. And she, sensing this, did not push. Her trust did not come from knowledge, but from consistency. From the way his presence never wavered, and his attention never demanded anything in return. The bond deepened despite uncertainty. Secrets did not weaken it. They shaped it, made it careful, made it intentional. Love began to take root not in exposure but in understanding that some truths require trust before they can be revealed. What lay beneath the surface was powerful, and both felt it. Not as fear, but as anticipation. The sense that when the truths eventually emerged, they would either strengthen what was forming or test it beyond measure. For now, they allowed the mystery to remain. Because sometimes, love grows strongest not from what is known, but from what is patiently awaited. What had once been contained quietly now demanded recognition. The attachment he tried to keep measured and distant began to assert itself in ways he could no longer ignore. His thoughts returned to her without permission, lingering longer each time. What started as curiosity had transformed into something deeper, heavier, and far more personal. Control became difficult. Not because he lost discipline, but because emotion began to guide instinct. Decisions once made without hesitation now carried weight. Every choice seemed incomplete if it did not account for her existence. Her presence had begun to matter in ways power never had. Love surfaced slowly. It did not rush or overwhelm him. It grew steady and undeniable, rooted in respect and admiration rather than desire alone. Her strength drew him in. Her calm steadied him. Her independence challenged him. She was not something to possess, she was someone to protect. He noticed how differently he behaved. His attention softened. His patience lengthened. His instincts shifted from command to care. These changes unsettled him, yet they also felt natural. As if this version of himself had always existed, waiting for the right presence to awaken it. She felt the change as well. Though nothing was spoken, she sensed the certainty in his attention. It was no longer distant or observant, it was intentional. Consistent. Safe. That steadiness allowed her to let her guard lower, just slightly, enough to acknowledge the connection growing between them. Romance deepened quietly. Not through gestures or declarations, but through emotional awareness. Through the way they noticed absence. Through how closeness felt grounding rather than consuming. Love formed without urgency, yet with unmistakable depth. He resisted briefly. Not her but the vulnerability she introduced into his world. Caring meant risk. Loving meant exposure. Yet denial demanded more effort than acceptance. The truth was simple and impossible to escape. She mattered to him. More than reputation. More than routine. more than the world he controlled. That realization did not weaken him, it clarified him. Attachment became undeniable. The distance he once relied on no longer protected him. It isolated him. Love, he realized, was not distraction. It was direction. For the first time, he wanted more than dominance. He wanted connection that endured. Meaning that lasted. A future that did not end in solitude. The feelings he tried to contain did not demand expression. They demanded choice, and slowly, without resistance, he chose her not with words, but with intention, presence, and the quiet acceptance that love had already found its place within him. Something profound changed within him the moment protection replaced dominance. Power had always been his language. It shaped how he moved, how he decided, how he survived. Control was not cruelty, it was structure. Yet when it came to her, control no longer felt right. What emerged instead was an instinct far stronger than authority. Protection became natural. Not as possession, but as responsibility. He began to sense the dangers surrounding his world more sharply, not because they threatened him, but because they could reach her. This awareness transformed how he measured risk. What once felt acceptable now felt careless. His strength found a new purpose. Power no longer existed to command fear, it existed to create safety. He became more careful, more deliberate, not out of weakness, but out of intention. Loving her reshaped his priorities without demanding sacrifice. She felt the shift immediately. Though nothing was said, she sensed the difference in how his presence steadied rather than intimidated. His attention did not restrict her, it reassured her. This consistency allowed her trust to deepen naturally. Romance grew stronger within that safety. Love no longer felt uncertain or fragile. Felt grounded. She no longer questioned his intentions because his actions carried clarity. Protection, when guided by respect, became the foundation of their connection. He learned restraint. True protection did not require dominance. It required patience, awareness, and humility. These lessons did not diminish him, they refined him. For the first time, his strength served something beyond himself. Trust matured between them. She allowed herself to believe in his care because it never demanded obedience or gratitude. It honored her independence. This balance deepened their bond beyond attraction, shaping something enduring. He no longer feared vulnerability. The risks of caring felt outweighed by the purpose it brought into his life. Love had given his power direction and his presence meaning. What formed between them was rare, a relationship where strength protected rather than controlled, where romance was steady rather than chaotic, and where love grew from respect rather than fear. In choosing protection over power, he did not lose authority, he found something greater. Love does not exist in isolation, and his world refused to remain distant as feelings deepened. The reality surrounding him began to press closer. The life he led was built on influence, reputation, and consequences that never slept. What once felt controlled now felt volatile, not because danger had increased, but because there was finally something worth losing. He became painfully aware of the contrast. Her world moved with sincerity and intention, while his demanded calculation. The balance he had mastered for years suddenly felt fragile. Love introduced stakes his power could not fully shield. Fear returned, but different this time. Not fear for himself, but fear of exposure. Fear of how his world could reach her even without invitation. Every step forward with her felt meaningful, yet every shadow of his past felt heavier. Love sharpened his awareness instead of blinding him. He stood at an internal crossroads. Walking away would protect her. Staying close would put her at risk. Neither option felt acceptable anymore. Love had complicated simplicity and demanded courage beyond dominance. She sensed the tension. Not through words or distance, but through the weight he carried. His composure remained intact, yet something inside him wrestled with restraint. The safety he had built around her now felt threatened by the truth of who he was. Romance did not fade under pressure. It matured. It stopped being merely emotional and became intentional. Love, tested by reality, demanded choice rather than desire. It asked whether connection was worth the consequences it carried. He evaluated everything. Every alliance, every habit, every action that defined his position. For the first time, his loyalty was divided not between people, but between identity and future. The man he had been conflicted with the man he was becoming. Protection required sacrifice, that he could no longer pretend that love and danger were separate. To keep her safe meant reshaping his world, not hiding her within it. This realization terrified him more than any rival ever had. Yet love remained steady, not reckless, not naive. It did not ask him to abandon everything overnight. It asked him to be honest with himself, to choose intentionally rather than reactively. The test was clear. Could he transform without losing authority? Could he protect without controlling? Could love survive the weight of reality as the pressure mounted? One truth remained unshaken. Whatever choice came next would define more than his power, it would define who he truly was. The final choice did not arrive suddenly. It formed slowly, shaped by reflection, restraint, and resolve. He understood that love could not survive inside the same structures that once defined him. Power had always been his shield, but now it felt like a barrier. To move forward, he needed to loosen his grip on the parts of his world that thrived on fear rather than loyalty. Change began quietly. It appeared in the way he reorganized priorities, distanced himself from destructive influences, and redirected influence toward stability. Authority did not vanish, it transformed. Leadership no longer meant dominance alone. It meant responsibility. She remained his anchor, not by demand, not by sacrifice, but by presence. Her calm strength reminded him that love was not a weakness, it was clarity. With her near, decisions felt grounded instead of reactive. Romance matured into partnership, built on trust rather than secrecy. The risks did not disappear, but for the first time he faced them without hiding behind reputation. He accepted that real protection meant transparency and intention. Love had taught him that shielding someone did not mean controlling their world, it meant reshaping his own. He chose differently. Not abandoning who he was, but refining it. The man shaped by survival evolved into a man capable of balance. His influence still carried weight, yet it now served a future instead of a past. Romance flourished in quiet strength. Moments between them became softer, steadier, and more meaningful. The intensity that once burned with danger now glowed with certainty. Love was no longer a question. It was a foundation. She was no longer an accident in his life. She was purpose. The future did not promise perfection, but it offered honesty. Together, they stood at the edge of something earned, not stolen, not forced, but built. Love, once unexpected, became the reason transformation succeeded. His world remained complex, yet it no longer controlled him. Love had not weakened the Korean Mafia boss. It had refined him, redirected him, and revealed the man beneath the power. And in choosing love, he did not lose his world. He finally gained one worth keeping.